Islamic State, also known as ISIS or ISIL, is a transnational Salafi jihadist group designated as a terrorist organization by the United Nations and numerous countries, including many Muslim-majority nations. It seeks to establish a global caliphate through armed struggle and demands the obedience of Muslims worldwide. Rising to prominence in 2014, ISIS exploited the Syrian civil war to seize territories in Iraq and Syria, enforcing its extremist version of Islamic law over more than 12 million people. However, after years of conflict with American, Iraqi, and Kurdish forces, it lost its last stronghold in the Middle East by 2019 and shifted to an insurgency. While weakened in West Asia, ISIS remains active in Africa, where it still controls significant territory. Known for extreme brutality, ISIS committed genocide against the Yazidis and Iraqi Turkmen, persecuted Christians, Shia Muslims, and Mandaeans, executed prisoners of war, and publicized videos of atrocities. It carried out terror attacks worldwide, including the 2015 Paris attacks, the 2024 Kerman bombings, and the 2024 Crocus City Hall attack. The group has also been accused of sexual violence and was involved in the 2025 massacres of Syrian Christians and Alawites after the fall of the Assad government. Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a Sunni jihadist organization founded in 1988 by Osama bin Laden and other veterans of the Soviet-Afghan War. It aims to unite the Muslim world under a global Islamic caliphate through militant jihad. Bin Laden became radicalized in the 1980s, viewing military victories in Afghanistan as proof that Islam could be defended through violence. After the Gulf War, he saw the United States as Islam's main enemy, especially due to its military presence in Saudi Arabia. In the early 1990s, he moved to Sudan, expanding Al-Qaeda's network and launching attacks such as the 1992 hotel bombing in Yemen. Under Taliban protection in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda carried out the 1998 U.S. embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. Its deadliest attack came on September 11, 2001, which killed nearly 3,000 people. This led to the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan to dismantle Al-Qaeda and overthrow the Taliban. The group adapted by decentralizing, inspiring attacks worldwide, such as the 2004 Madrid train bombings and the 2005 London bombings. In 2011, bin Laden was killed in a U.S. raid in Pakistan. Al-Qaeda then shifted its focus to regional conflicts, positioning itself as a defender of Sunni Muslims in wars like the Syrian civil war. Today, it remains active but more fragmented. The Provisional Irish Republican Army, commonly known as the IRA, was a paramilitary group that aimed to end British rule in Northern Ireland and unify Ireland as an independent republic. Active from the late 1960s, it became the most prominent armed faction in the Northern Ireland conflict. The IRA claimed legitimacy as the true successor to the original IRA from the Irish War of Independence, rejecting the authority of both the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, which classified it as a terrorist organization. Initially focused on defending Catholic communities from loyalist and police violence, it shifted to an offensive guerrilla campaign against British forces by 1970. Receiving support from the Irish diaspora, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, the IRA carried out bombings and attacks in Northern Ireland, England, and parts of Europe. Its targets included military, political, and economic sites, as well as civilian contractors linked to British security. By the time of its ceasefire in 1997, the conflict had claimed over 1,700 lives. In 2005, the IRA officially ended its armed campaign, though splinter groups remain active today. Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a Somali Salafi jihadist group allied with Al-Qaeda and actively engaged in the Somali civil war. It frequently accuses other Muslims of apostasy to justify terrorist attacks on Somali civilians and government forces. The group emerged in the mid-2000s as a youth militia and gained prominence during Ethiopia's invasion of Somalia, presenting itself as a resistance force. Ethiopia supported Somalia's transitional federal government against the Islamic Courts Union, ICU. Al-Shabaab, originally the militant wing of the ICU, viewed this government as complicit in the invasion, which fueled its armed resistance. Designated as a terrorist organization by several countries, Al-Shabaab has suffered territorial losses since 2014 and shifted to guerrilla warfare and high-casualty terror attacks. It has carried out deadly incidents such as the 2013 Westgate Mall attack in Kenya, the October 2017 Mogadishu bombings, and the 2022 Somali Ministry of Education bombings. The group also extends its insurgency into Kenya and launched an invasion into Ethiopia in 2022. Palestinian Islamic Jihad, often abbreviated as PIJ, is a militant Palestinian organization founded in 1981 with the goal of establishing an Islamic state in all of historic Palestine and eliminating the state of Israel through armed struggle. Unlike Hamas, which also participates in politics, PIJ rejects political engagement and focuses solely on violent resistance, making it one of the most hardline factions in the Palestinian movement. The group receives financial and military support primarily from Iran and maintains close ties with Hezbollah. PIJ has carried out numerous suicide bombings, rocket attacks, and shootings against Israeli targets, often sparking escalations in Gaza. It has been designated a terrorist organization by the United States, the European Union, and many other countries. Though smaller in size compared to Hamas, PIJ remains highly active in Gaza and the West Bank, playing a central role in flare-ups of violence, including rocket barrages and clashes with Israeli forces in recent years. The Mujahideen Shura Council. Mujahideen Shura Council is a jihadist umbrella organization formed in 2006 in Iraq by uniting several insurgent groups, including Al-Qaeda in Iraq, to coordinate attacks against U.S. forces, the Iraqi government, and coalition allies. Its creation marked an effort to strengthen the insurgency by pooling resources and presenting a unified leadership. Led at first by Abu Ayyub al-Masri, the council declared its intention to establish an Islamic state governed by Sharia law, which eventually evolved into the Islamic State of Iraq, the direct predecessor of ISIS. The council carried out suicide bombings, assassinations, and large-scale attacks during the height of the Iraq War, targeting both security forces and civilians accused of supporting the government. Although short-lived as an independent entity, the Mujahideen Shura Council played a pivotal role in the rise of ISIS by laying the organizational and ideological foundation that later fueled its territorial expansion across Iraq and Syria. Lord's Resistance Army. The Lord's Resistance Army, or LRA, is a Ugandan rebel group founded in 1987 by Joseph Kony, a self-proclaimed prophet who claimed to fight for a government based on the Ten Commandments. Originally emerging as an insurgency against President Yoweri Museveni's government, the LRA quickly became infamous for extreme brutality, including massacres, mutilations, and the widespread abduction of children forced into becoming soldiers or sex slaves. At its height, the group operated across Uganda, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, displacing millions of civilians. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against Kony and other senior leaders for crimes against humanity and war crimes. International military campaigns, particularly supported by the United States and African Union forces, significantly weakened the group by the 2010s. Today, the LRA is a fragmented remnant with only a few hundred fighters, but Joseph Kony remains at large, symbolizing one of Africa's most notorious insurgencies. Hamas. Hamas is a Palestinian Islamist movement founded in 1987 during the First Intifada as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. It combines both a political wing and a military wing, known as the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, and has the stated goal of establishing an Islamic state in historic Palestine while opposing the existence of Israel. Hamas gained significant influence through its social services network in Gaza and rose to power politically after winning the 2006 Palestinian legislative elections, eventually seizing full control of Gaza in 2007 following clashes with FATAH. The group has since engaged in multiple armed conflicts with Israel, using tactics such as rocket attacks, tunnel operations, and suicide bombings. It is designated as a terrorist organization by the United States, the European Union, and other countries, though it also maintains strong support from Iran and Qatar. Today, Hamas remains the de facto governing authority in Gaza, playing a central role in both Palestinian politics and the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Hezbollah, meaning Party of God, is a Shiite Islamist political and militant organization based in Lebanon, founded in 1982 with support from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps during the Lebanese Civil War. Its stated goals include resisting Israeli occupation and promoting Iran's model of Islamic governance, while also serving as a powerful political party within Lebanon. Hezbollah's military wing is among the most heavily armed non-state actors in the world. possessing tens of thousands of rockets and missiles, and has fought numerous conflicts with Israel, most notably the 2006 Lebanon War. The group also intervened in the Syrian civil war in support of Bashar al-Assad, significantly expanding its regional influence. Funded and trained primarily by Iran, with additional support from Syria, Hezbollah is designated as a terrorist organization by the United States, the European Union, and others, though it retains strong backing from parts of Lebanon's Shiite population. Today, Hezbollah operates both as a dominant political force in Lebanon and as a key player in Middle Eastern conflicts. Boko Haram. Boko Haram is a Nigerian jihadist group founded in 2002 by Mohammed Yusuf with the aim of establishing an Islamic state and rejecting Western education, which the group sees as corrupting. After Yusuf's death in police custody in 2009, Boko Haram became increasingly violent under the leadership of Abu Bakr Shekau, launching an armed insurgency that has killed tens of thousands and displaced millions across Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. The group is notorious for mass abductions, most infamously the 2014 kidnapping of over 270 schoolgirls from Chibok, and for suicide bombings, raids, and massacres targeting both civilians and security forces. In 2015, Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS, leading to the creation of the Islamic State West Africa province, though internal splits weakened the original faction. Designated a terrorist organization by the United Nations, the United States, and others, Boko Haram remains one of Africa's deadliest extremist groups, continuing to destabilize the Lake Chad Basin. Army of God. The Army of God is a violent anti-abortion extremist group that emerged in the United States in the 1980s, advocating for the use of force to end abortion. Operating as a loosely connected underground network rather than a formal organization, its members have claimed responsibility for bombings, arson attacks, kidnappings, and assassinations of abortion providers. The group published a manual in the early 1990s outlining violent tactics, which was later used by extremists to justify attacks. While it lacks centralized leadership, individuals inspired by the Army of God have carried out some of the most notable cases of anti-abortion violence, including the murders of doctors and clinic staff. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies classify the group as a domestic terrorist organization, stressing that its ideology poses a serious threat to reproductive health care providers. Despite law enforcement crackdowns, the Army of God continues to exist as an underground extremist movement, relying on propaganda and lone wolf actors to carry out its mission. Attomwaffen Division. The Attomwaffen Division was a decentralized neo-Nazi terrorist network founded in the United States in 2013 by Brandon Russell. It quickly expanded internationally with cells in the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, Brazil, Estonia, Finland, and Argentina, with suspected ones in Russia and Switzerland. The group promoted an extreme accelerationist ideology, advocating for guerrilla warfare to collapse governments and establish a white ethnostate. Members burned U.S. flags and copies of the Constitution while encouraging attacks against racial minorities, LGBTQ individuals, Jews, and the U.S. government itself. Attomwaffen members have been linked to multiple murders, bombings, kidnappings, and acts of torture, along with planned terrorist attacks, including mass murder plots, attempts to sabotage water systems, and schemes to attack the U.S. power grid. They even plotted to blow up nuclear power stations. The group promoted a so-called white jihad, idolized Osama bin Laden, and sought alliances with Islamic terrorist organizations such as Hamas, while admiring the martyrdom culture of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. In 2020, Attomwaffen rebranded itself as the National Socialist Order, but allegedly disbanded in 2024. The Taliban. The Taliban is a Sunni Islamist movement that originated in Afghanistan in the early 1990s, emerging from the chaos of the Afghan civil war after the Soviet withdrawal. Founded by Mullah Muhammad Omar and composed largely of Pashtun fighters, the group aimed to establish an Islamic emirate governed by strict interpretations of Sharia law. By 1996, the Taliban had seized control of Kabul and ruled most of Afghanistan until they were toppled by the US-led invasion in 2001 for sheltering Al-Qaeda. Despite this, they regrouped as an insurgency, waging a 2-decade-long war against US and NATO forces and the Afghan government. The Taliban financed themselves through opium trafficking, extortion, and support from regional actors. In August 2021, following the US withdrawal, the group rapidly retook Kabul and re-established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Since then, they have promised moderation but continue to enforce harsh restrictions, particularly against women and dissenters, keeping them under international scrutiny and sanctions. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, commonly known as FARC, was a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla group that emerged in 1964 from Colombia's communist movement and peasant self-defense militias. Its stated goal was to overthrow the Colombian government and establish a socialist state, fueled by grievances over inequality and rural land rights. Over time, FARC became heavily involved in kidnapping, extortion, and drug trafficking, making it one of the world's wealthiest insurgent groups. At its peak, it had around 20,000 fighters and controlled vast swaths of rural Colombia. The Colombian military, backed by U.S. aid through Plan Colombia, gradually weakened FARC in the 2000s. After years of negotiations, the group signed a historic peace agreement with the Colombian government in 2016, officially disbanding as an armed group and transitioning into a political party. However, some dissident factions rejected the peace deal and continue to engage in armed conflict and criminal activities, keeping the FARC legacy alive in fragmented form. The Communist Party of India, often called CPI Maoist, is an armed revolutionary group formed in 2004 through the merger of the People's War Group and the Maoist Communist Center. It seeks to overthrow the Indian state and establish a communist society through a protracted People's War, inspired by Mao Zedong's ideology. The group operates primarily in India's rural and forested regions, particularly across the Red Corridor, spanning states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. CPI Maoist targets security forces, infrastructure, and government institutions while claiming to fight for tribal and marginalized communities against exploitation and land displacement. It has carried out deadly ambushes and bombings, making it one of India's most significant internal security threats. The Indian government designates it a terrorist organization and has launched large-scale counterinsurgency operations, significantly weakening its influence in recent years. However, the group continues to maintain a presence in remote areas, sustaining its decades-long insurgency. National Liberation Army. The National Liberation Army, or ELN, is a Marxist guerrilla group founded in Colombia in 1964, inspired by the Cuban Revolution and liberation theology. Unlike other insurgent groups, the ELN has strong ties to radical Catholic priests who emphasized fighting poverty and inequality through armed struggle. Its main objectives are to overthrow the Colombian government, expel foreign influence, and redistribute land and resources to peasants. The group has been known for kidnappings, extortion, and attacks on oil infrastructure, which provide much of its funding. At its peak, the ELN had thousands of fighters across Colombia, though its numbers have declined due to military pressure and peace talks. Despite these setbacks, the ELN remains active, particularly in rural border areas with Venezuela, where it has found safe havens and new opportunities to expand. The Colombian government designates it a terrorist organization, and peace negotiations have repeatedly stalled, leaving the group a persistent threat to regional security. Black September Organization. The Black September Organization was a Palestinian militant faction formed in 1970 after the Jordanian Civil War, when the Jordanian government expelled the Palestine Liberation Organization during what became known as Black September. The group emerged as a radical offshoot of FATAH, seeking revenge against Jordanian authorities and to advance the Palestinian nationalist cause through high-profile international attacks. Its most infamous operation was the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre, where members took Israeli athletes hostage, leading to the deaths of 11 Israelis and a German police officer. Black September also carried out assassinations, including that of Jordanian Prime Minister Wasfi al-Tal in Cairo, as well as hijackings and embassy raids to draw global attention to the Palestinian struggle. Although the group operated under its own name, many analysts believe it functioned as a covert wing of FATAH. By the mid-1970s, the organization faded as its members were absorbed back into mainstream Palestinian factions, but its legacy left a lasting mark on international counterterrorism. The Shining Path. Officially self-named the Communist Party of Peru, is a Maoist guerrilla group founded by Abimael Guzman in 1969. It sought to overthrow the Peruvian government through a people's war and establish a Maoist new democracy, believing this would eventually lead to full communism and spark a world revolution. The group became notorious for its extreme brutality, carrying out assassinations, bombings, beheadings, and massacres against peasants, political rivals, and civilians. It also rejected human rights, The Shining Path is responsible for over 30,000 deaths and disappearances during Peru's armed conflict. After the capture of its leaders, its influence waned. But the militarized Communist Party of Peru faction remains active. Black Liberation Army. The Black Liberation Army was a militant underground group that operated in the United States from 1970 to 1981. Rooted in Marxism-Leninism and black nationalism, it was formed by former members of the Black Panther Party and the Republic of New Africa. The BLA saw itself as an armed revolutionary force fighting against the U.S. government for black liberation and self-determination. It carried out bombings, assassinations of police officers and white civilians, robberies, plane hijackings, and prison breaks. The group remained active until 1981, when an armed robbery involving BLA and Weather Underground members resulted in the deaths of 2 police officers and a security guard. Many of its members were later arrested. The FATAH Revolutionary Council, better known as the Abu Nidal Organization, was a Palestinian militant group founded in 1974 by Abu Nidal, after breaking away from Fatah due to disagreements with Yasser Arafat. While advocating for pan-Arabism and the destruction of Israel, in practice, the ANO largely served Abu Nidal's personal agendas, operating as a secular, leftist, anti-Zionist, and anti-Western terrorist group. Though designated a terrorist organization by numerous countries, the group received support from Iraq, Syria, and Libya. At various points, the ANO became infamous for its global campaign of terror, conducting hijackings, assassinations, kidnappings of diplomats, and attacks on synagogues. It carried out at least 90 terrorist attacks across 20 countries, resulting in around 2,000 casualties. Abu Nidal died in Baghdad in 2002 under disputed circumstances, marking the end of the group